Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking an early look at the 2022 United States Senate elections and whether Republicans have the opportunity to take back the Senate from the Democrats, who currently hold a very slim 50-50 majority because Vice President Harris can break the tie. And so with all that stated, let's just get right into it. The safe Democratic states are going to be Washington, Oregon, California, Illinois, Maryland, New York, Connecticut, Vermont, and Hawaii. And the solid Republican states are going to be Idaho, Utah, North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, Louisiana, Alabama, South Carolina, Kentucky, and Indiana. So that leaves Republicans at 43 and Democrats at 45 to start. And now I'm also going to characterize Alaska as solid Republican. However, there is an interesting primary there because Lisa Murkowski is relatively unpopular among Alaskan Republicans. She's been primaried before in 2010, and she actually won the write-in against her primary challenger in a three-way race. And a lot of people are saying maybe Lisa Murkowski is going to be able to win another write-in campaign if she's primaried again. But I don't think that's true because if you look at polling, her primary challenger is beating her and a Democrat in a three-way race. In fact, Murkowski's placing last. And Murkowski's being actively campaigned against by Trump and the Alaskan Republican Party. And so I think she's probably going to be primaried, and she's not going to be able to win a write-in campaign. But I just want to touch on that. As for likely Democratic states, I believe Colorado is going to be likely Democratic. Colorado voted for Joe Biden by 13 points in 2020, which was a huge leftward swing from Trump's 4-point loss in 2016. And 2022 is likely going to be a Republican wave year because that's how midterms work. It's generally a wave against the incumbent president. It happened in 2018. It happened in 2010. And so that's probably going to happen again. And so Republicans will have kind of more of a turnout advantage. But Colorado is becoming increasingly blue. And Joe Biden's strong performance there. I mean, he definitely was helped by the fact that Trump had a suburban stigma and the Denver suburbs swung hard against Trump. But I think Michael Bennett's going to hold this seat by around 8 to 10 points. As for the likely Republican states, I'm going to start with the state of Iowa. Iowa will be safe Republican if Chuck Grassley decides to run again, but he's going to be like in his late 80s to early 90s during this next term, and I really don't think he's going to run again. And so, Iowa's a state that's becoming redder and redder. It went from being a 6-point Obama win to a 9-point Trump win in 2016, and then an 8-point Trump win in 2020. And so Iowa's not really going to be competitive from here on out. I think like a 10-point win for a Republican at the minimum in Iowa in 2022, but I think if Grassley runs, he's probably going to win by like 15 to 20. The next likely Republican state is going to be Ohio. Ohio is a state similar to Iowa that went for Obama by a decent margin and then swung far right to Trump, and Trump won it, I think, by around 8 points each time. And so Ohio's not really going to be that competitive either. Tim Ryan's a relatively strong Democratic candidate, but I still don't think he's going to be able to win. The Republican primary in the state's going to be competitive, and I think it's going to be a bit of a mess. But I think even the weakest candidate probably is going to win the general election by around 6 points, so I'm going to categorize Ohio as likely Republican. The last likely Republican state is going to be Florida. Florida is a state that has also become much redder in the last couple years, and Marco Rubio is already extremely popular there. In 2016, he won the Senate race by almost 8 points on the same day when Trump only won it by 1.2 points, and the state's only gotten redder since then. And Marco Rubio, he's a strong candidate. He's got the Cuban appeal, and I think he's going to win very easily. I think this could be a solid race. But for now, until the election gets closer, I'm going to categorize it as likely. Now I'm going to talk about the competitive states, west to east, starting with Nevada. Nevada is a very interesting state. The Nevada Democratic Party recently had a lot of its staff quit after the Democratic Socialists of America started taking over the party in the state. And Nevada's also been trending right as a whole. It stayed relatively the same margin-wise in 2020, despite the national popular vote shifting over 2 points to the left. So I think this is a very winnable election for Republicans, and I think it's being overrated for Democrats overall by the media. But I do think Catherine Cortez Masto has the advantage of incumbency, And I think there will be some division over the DSA taking over the Democratic Party in Nevada, but I think most Democrats will rally behind Cortez Masto. And since we don't even know the Republican nominee yet, I'm going to rate this race as lean Democrat. In Arizona, Mark Kelly was elected in a 2020 special election. He was able to outperform Joe Biden in the state and win by a little more than 2 points. And Arizona is a state that has become much more competitive in the last years. It went from a 9-point Romney win in 2012 to a very small, less than 1 point victory for Joe Biden in 2020. And while Arizona did vote for Joe Biden, it still voted more than 4 points to the right of the country, and I think is very much still up for grabs for Republicans in the Senate race. Mark Kelly is definitely going to have the advantage of incumbency, but Arizona is still not a solid blue state. People like Mark Brnovich or Blake Masters, I think, would be able to win this race. Kelly's win over McSally in 2020 proves that he's able to appeal to Arizona even more than Joe Biden was against Donald Trump, who was very unpopular in Arizona because he spent his entire presidency basically bashing John McCain, who was very popular in Arizona. So because Mark Kelly was able to outrun Joe Biden, I think he is going to be able to win this Senate race. I have it tilt Democrat. Now for the state of Wisconsin. Wisconsin is easily the most winnable state for Republicans out of the 3 Rust Belt states that flipped for Trump in 2016. And despite the fact that Biden was able to win it back in 2020, he only won it by 0.6%, which is even smaller than the margin that Trump won it by in 2016. And Trump actually underperformed Ron Johnson in 2016. Ron Johnson won the state by around 3.5 points, while Trump only won it by 0.7. And so in a red wave year like 2022 is shaping out to be, and an incumbent, if Johnson runs again, I think he's going to be able to win by a relatively big margin. I think he could probably win by 3 to 4 points, which is pretty big in the state of Wisconsin. So I'm rating Wisconsin as lean Republican. Next up is the state of Georgia. In 2020, Georgia shocked the nation by voting for Joe Biden and voting for 2 Democrats in the Senate over 2 incumbent Republicans. And this is a state that's moving towards the left and will soon be unwinnable for Republicans. However, I believe Republicans do have a chance of winning it in 2022. Raphael Warnock was able to win very narrowly over Kelly Loeffler in 2020, but it wasn't entirely an impressive win because Warnock was able to clutch it up in a runoff with all eyes on him and donations flooding in from all over the country, and a completely demoralized Republican Party after Trump lost the state and the election as a whole 2 months before, and the Republicans in Georgia thought that fraud could have been in the equation. And so Loeffler's campaigned on that and was just also horrible, continuously repeating the phrase radical liberal Raphael Warnock. It ended up just becoming a meme, really. And she was just an establishment Republican that ran an awful campaign. And so I think someone like Herschel Walker, Trump-backed, but not necessarily too Trumpian in the state of Georgia, I think he's a Republican candidate that could win this seat back. He'd have the black appeal to win back in the Atlanta region. And so I do think Herschel Walker, when he eventually announces his Senate bid, I think he will be able to win this seat by a very narrow margin. Up next is North Carolina. So North Carolina seems to be some sort of perpetually lean Republican state. It always goes very narrowly Republican, but other than 2008, Democrats can never seem to really get a hold on the state. And 2020 was a very good year for Democrats, who had pretty much everything going for them. They were able to blame the pandemic and lots of racial issues on Donald Trump. And Biden was still unable to flip North Carolina. And Democrats also don't really have a good candidate to put up in North Carolina yet. On the Republican side, Ted Budd's a pretty strong candidate. He has the endorsement from Donald Trump, and I think he could probably win the election. Even Pat McCrory, I think, would have a good chance at winning, although I do think it would be more competitive. But I think Ted Budd will be the Republican nominee, and so I'm rating North Carolina as lean Republican. Next up is the state of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is going to be one of the closest races of this cycle. On the Democratic side, there's Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman and Congressman Conor Lamb. And I think this is going to be a very hotly contested primary, but I think both of them have the chance of winning the general. I think Conor Lamb will probably have a better chance in the general because he's a more popular figure in the suburban areas, and that was what was able to carry Joe Biden to a victory in 2020. And on the Republican side is Sean Parnell, who lost a very close race to Conor Lamb in 2020. He ran roughly in line with Trump in terms of win margin in the district that he ran in 2020, but I think he was probably held back down ballot by Trump's suburban unpopularity. I think he'll be able to do better in the PA suburbs in 2022 than he did, but he's still not an entirely popular candidate for the suburbs. And so I think this is going to be a very incredibly close race, and it's going to come down to the candidates. I think Parnell will probably win against Fetterman because I think he's being incredibly overrated in electability. Like, it's so much to the point that it's become kind of a meme on the internet, you know, big dude equals safety. But I do think Parnell would win against him. However, I think Lamb would win against Parnell, and because I think Lamb has a better chance to win the primary, I'm rating Pennsylvania as tilt Democrat. Finally, we have the state of New Hampshire. Maggie Hassan won this race in 2016 when she was the governor by only 0.14 points, and that was a very close race. In 2020, New Hampshire swung pretty far left. Joe Biden was able to win it by 7 points, but even as Joe Biden won it by 7 points, Chris Sununu was able to win it by 32 points, and he's a very popular governor. And I think if he ran, he'd be able to win. But just because, you know, he's a popular governor doesn't mean, you know, he's automatically going to win the Senate race. I mean, in 2020 in Montana, Steve Bullock was a very popular governor in Montana. He still lost by 10 points. In 2018 in Tennessee, Phil Bredesen was a popular governor in Tennessee. He lost by over 10. And so the point is that just because he's a popular governor doesn't mean he's automatically going to win the Senate election. But New Hampshire isn't as blue as those states are red. And so I do think that the popularity of his governorship is going to be a huge advantage to him if he runs for Senate, which I think he will, even though he hasn't announced it yet. And so I'm rating New Hampshire as lean Republican. And with that, I have Republicans taking back the Senate majority very narrowly, 51-49, after flipping New Hampshire and Georgia, with the Democrats flipping Pennsylvania. Of course, this is all extremely preliminary and is extremely subject to change in the next year and a half, but as of now, this is my prediction. So if you like this video, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button to show your support, and leave a comment saying what you'd like to see, what you agree with, and what you disagree with. So thank you for watching, and have a great day.